Samuel Taylor Coleridge was born in Devonshire in 1772. His father died when he was very young. As Coleridge grew up, it became evident that he was a gifted writer and speaker. He attended Cambridge University and later met William Wordsworth. The two became very close friends and often discussed poetry together. Early on, he married a woman he did not love, Sarah Fricker, because he was pressured by a friend to do so. Later on, he fell in love with another woman, Sarah Hutchinson, but could not marry her because of his first marriage. This troubled him all of his life. He finally separated from his first wife, and in the meantime, developed a dependency on the drug laudanum, a type of opium. He suffered health problems as a result and was generally depressed. He and Wordsworth parted ways for some time, but later reconciled. Probably one of Coleridge's finest literary contributions in his poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, although it is only one of his brilliant works. Coleridge died in 1834.
Romanticism was a time period in which an attitude or intellectual orientation was included that characterized many works of literature, paintings, music, architectures, criticism, and historiography in Western civilization over a period from the late 18th century to the mid-19th century. It can be seen as a rejection of the precepts of order, calm, harmony, balance, idealization, and rationality that typified classicism in general and late 18th century neoclassicism in particular. It was also to some extent a reaction against the Enlightenment and against 18th century rationalism and physical materialism in general. Romanticism emphasized the individual, the subjective, the irrational, the imaginative, the personal, the spontaneous, the emotional, the visionary, the transcendentalist. Romanticism proper was preceded by several related developments from the mid-18th century on that can be termed pre-Romanticism. Amongst its trends was a new appreciation of the medieval romance, from which the Romantic movement caught its name. The romance was a tale or a ballad of chivalric adventure whose emphasis on individual heroism and on the exotic and the mysterious was in clear contrast to the formality and the elegantness of the prevailing classical forms of literature, such as the French neoclassical tragedy or the English heroic couplet in poetry. This new interest in the relatively unsophisticated but overtly emotional literary expressions of the past was a dominant note in the period of Romanticism. The second phase of Romanticism, comprising the period from about 1805 to the 1830s, was marked by a quickening of cultural nationalism and a new attention to national origins. As attested by the collection and imitation of native folklore, folk ballads and poetry, folk dance and music, and even previously ignored medieval and Renaissance works. The revived historical appreciation was translated to imaginative writing by Sir Walter Scott, who is often considered to have invented the historical novel. At about the same time, English Romantic poetry had reached its zenith in the works of John Keats, Lord Byron, and Percy Shelley. Bring in the dancing lobster. I'm Penelope, and I'm Coleridge's #1 fan. But then, I heard about this poem, and it's called Frost at Midnight. And I've never heard about it, which is impossible because I'm his #1 fan. But can you tell me more about it? It's called Frost at Midnight.
Sure. Here's a quick summary. In Frost at Midnight by Samuel Coleridge, we can assume that Coleridge is a speaker, and the silent listener is his infant son, Hartley Coleridge. The setting of the poem is late at night when Coleridge is the only one awake in his household. Coleridge sits next to his son's cradle and reflects on the frost falling outside his home. He takes this instance of solitude to allow his reflections to expand his love of nature. Coleridge describes to his son how his love of nature dates back to his boyhood. During school, Coleridge would gaze out the schoolhouse window and admire returning to his rural birthplace. Coleridge tells his son that he is delighted that his son will have more opportunities to observe the beauty of nature and will not be reared in the opportunity pent amid cloisters dim, as Coleridge himself was. Coleridge then wished that all seasons shall be sweet to his son, and that the son will learn to appreciate all aspects of nature. The want for a child to have a better life in the country area is a main characteristic of Romantic literature. in that a rural setting is better. Got it?
I can't believe I've never heard that poem. That's my favorite.
Great.
This court is now in session.
Hi, Judge. How are you?
Good.
Okay, well, today I wanted to talk about the issues on stanza 1 on Coleridge's poem. First, I noticed that the poem is mostly written in iambic pentameter. There was a few exceptions throughout the poem. I also noticed that the mood was peaceful. And the speaker, Coleridge himself, is sitting next to his son's crib. This stanza is when the setting is introduced for the first time, and it's in the woodlands, a cottage during winter. And I noticed the symbol frost, which is that frost is a symbol of God performing the christening of his newborn son.
Did you notice that also in the poem there's a bit of juxtaposition in which the frost is sort of forming and the fire is also like dying down, sort of nature's everlasting cycle when the frost is forming and increasing while the fire is dying down and decreasing.
Yeah, and I noticed in Yemen, end stop lines, would you like to point those out?
Well, sort of the end stopped lines, sort of, there's an emphasis and with the end stop lines and the enjambment, and there's also a bit of emphasis, as I noticed you said it's iambic pentameter, which is true, but there's also some exceptions in lines 11, 12, 17, 20, and 23, which sort of, I felt there was an emphasis, which Coleridge was pointing out in the poem of sort of about the setting and of all he's emphasizing all the emotions and the feelings and the settings of the poem.
And I noticed the poem is blank verse. Do you know what that means?
Well, it's pretty much iambic pentameter, although there are a few exceptions in this poem, and that there is also no rhyme.
Okay. And can you further explain to me when the tone shift occurs?
Well, the tone shift occurs later in the first stanza, sort of approaching the second stanza, when we see the tone shift. So right until now, he's sort of calm, and he's talking about his setting and all the frost and how he's really alone in nature. And then you start seeing how he starts describing like his restlessness with society and during his school days with how he was bullied and all that kind of stuff. And you not only see the romantic theme, which how rural is better than urban, but you also see the romantic theme of wanting better for your child, so he won't be bullied with a formal education.
Thank you, Judge.
This case is not closed.
Knock knock.
Who's there?
Stanza 2.
Stanza 2, who?
Stanza 2 from Coleridge's poem, Midnight Frost. Well, a quick summary about this stanza is that the speaker is reminiscing about his childhood and how he would fall asleep in class and dream of his home, which sort of like told the reader how lonely he was and homesick student was. Also, the first two lines, 24 and 25, there's repetition of how oft, which sort of further explains his restlessness at school. There's a few exceptions of iambic pentameter here on lines 24, 27, 33, 34, 37, and yeah, that's it.
I think that's kind of like how we said in stanza 1, kind of how like there's an emphasis on that part and on what the message Coleridge is trying to get across to us. I also noticed that there was an allusion in line 27 where it says the flickering flame suggests like a visit from a stranger. So he wants to go home, so he sort of hopes that a stranger might come to visit him, which shows like his loneliness, although he has his child there, which also meant, what we were discussing before was how that he was sort of apostrophizing his child, and when he was talking to him in the later stanzas, when he's talking about how he wants a better future for his child and how he's beginning to talk to him. And I also noticed that there was personification when it says in line 41, and still my heart leapt up, which kind of shows like how his heart was so full of emotion and he wants to go home, and he wants to be in his country and in nature in his country, which is his home for him and what the new home for his new child.
Yeehaw! Hi, I'm Paola, and welcome to my jacuzzi. Today, we will have a guest star, the special, the most important, Mocha! Mocha, say hi to the camera here. Look, Mocha. Say hi. Hi. You see? Today in my jacuzzi, we will be talking about the third stanza. I'm going to give you a quick summary of the third stanza, and Mocha here is going to be helping me. At this point, Coleridge turns his attention to his child, breathing quietly in his sleep beside him. He sweetly admires the child's beauty. As a parent, he is awestruck by this child who makes his heart so glad. He rejoices that this child won't be raised in the city nor schooled there, but in the beauty of the countryside. He tells the baby that he will be able to wander like a breeze by a lake and sandy shores, beneath mountains, and learn from nature and all that God has created. He tells his child that God will be his teacher and that God will mold his spirit. See, so he mostly gives the attention to the child here, and he's admiring beauty like he does in the other stanzas. In lines 53 and 54, in the great city, pent mid cloisters dim, and saw the lovely but sky and stars. There's a juxtaposition with the city that has no beauty for him. But in line 55, but thou, my babe, and shall wander like a breeze, is a simile. In lines 56 through 58, there's imagery with the beauty of nature and unity between the clouds and the earth. He summarizes and comes across a point that God will be his teacher, and God molds his spirit. In line 61, he says the word and the name God, which is a religious reference. And in line 63, with the chiasmus, himself and none, all things in himself, he's emphasizing the importance God is and connected to nature. Thank you for having me and Mocha today in my jacuzzi. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Pee-Pee, and I'm popular.
And this is
The Girls' Room. Today in the Girls' Room, we're going to discuss stanza 4.
Well, what I noticed when I first read the poem was the first line. And it says, therefore all seasons shall be sweet to thee. And you can find alliteration with the S's, which adds to the musicality, which adds to the assumption that the poem is pure, because a romantic theme during romantic literature was that the children and nature were pure.
Yeah. I also noticed personification, but in specific, pathetic fallacy.
What is that?
That is personification of nature. So, as you can see in line 67, you see a personification, and also in lines 73, or it's the secret ministry of Frost.
Wow, I didn't even notice that. Oh, and there's also, what we also noticed in the first poem was that there is a similar phrase which says the secret ministry. And you see how it ends in the stanza 4, and you can see how that the poem has kind of come full circle, which is kind of what nature does with all the 4 seasons. And so you can see that the unity of nature is kind of like the unity of the poem.
That's right. And there's, in line 67, 71, it's not iambic pentameter, like we said the poem was mostly written in. it's different, which emphasizes the importance these two lines are for the overall meaning.
I also noticed imagery.
Oh yes. In line 68 through 70, it gives a great imagery of nature and the beauty of nature.
You know what I also noticed?
What?
That the imagery of it is also like the beauty of nature, and that's just such like an important romantic theme in the literature of the time. I
Yeah.
just think it was just super important to mention that.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what I forgot? Look, there's repetition in the last line in line 75, quietly shining to the quiet moon. And I just think that the way that the frost and how they're hung up in the icicles, how it's quietly shining to the quiet moon, that the repetition enforces the nature of the relationship that nature has with the poem. So I think he did a very good job in ending his poem. He chose clever phrases to summarize what he wanted to say and came across his point. Well, thank you for watching the Girls' Room. Hello?
Mr. Coleridge?
Yeah.
Is this really you?
Yeah.
Do you want to win $1,000?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, well, about the poem. Are the tones really reflective and tranquil?
Yeah.
Great. I found 3 motifs. Can you tell me if they're right? First one, power of sleep, power of dreams, and power of imagination.
Yeah.
Can you stop saying yeah?
Yeah.
Well, we digress. Anyhow, can you answer and tell me what the effect on romanticism is on the poem?
Well, I was alive during the Romanticism period. It was the best period. It was all nature, and nothing of the city. It was all rural. And in my poem, Frost at Midnight, you can really see how the Romanticism ideals are portrayed. There is an effect on the nature, on the imagination. The relationship between children and the natural world is altered because I wanted a better life for my child Hartley, and that could only be attained through a rural lifestyle, not in a formal education, which was what I had. It was awful. And there was another relationship between adulthood and childhood, and the way that they're linked to the memory of an adult. And that was just such a big part of what me and my colleagues and contemporaries, what we believed during the Romanticism period to be correct. I think that's what you're looking for, young lady.
Well, thank you. Sorry to tell you, this was a prank call, and you're not gonna win $1,000.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.